Welcome to the Overcommitted Podcast, your weekly dose of real engineering conversations. I'm your host today, Erika, and I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Brittany.
We met while working on a team at GitHub and quickly realized that we are obsessed with getting better at what we do. So we decided to start this podcast to share what we've learned. We'll be taking up everything from leveling up your technical skills to navigating professional development, all with the goal of creating a community where engineers can learn and connect. Today's topic is the holy grail of developer productivity. That is flow state. We know the feeling. We start to work and find some kind of heightened zone of productivity and focus. And for developers, finding this ideal state has been directly linked to work quality, pace of completion, and overall job satisfaction. But what does the research say about this phenomenon? And what can ARCs tell us about how we can harness its power to our advantage? So let's start, Brittany, by talking about flow state. Let's describe what it means for us and what the first things that come to mind of what gets us into or takes us out of this zone.
Yeah, for me, I think I am not a psychologist or neurologist or anything, so I really only know, the effect on myself and not the specifics about, what it actually means for the average brain. But for me, what it means when I am in flow state is when, time sort of slips away and I'm so focused on a problem that you're so engaged and in the zone that everything just kind of comes together, it feels like, and feels smooth. And you look up and you're like, oh, an hour and a half has passed and I didn't realize it. That's usually when I feel like I'm in some sort of a flow state. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes have days where I go through the full day and I feel like I've done nothing. And then I have those magical days where I have done everything that I wanted to do and all the CI is passing, my PRs are approved. Yeah, and that feeling of joy and productivity, where things don't feel like a slog, but you're really cranking and getting things done. Yeah, that's what it is for me. I look at the list at the end of the day and it's all done. Yeah, so full disclaimer, I am also not a psychologist, but did do some research on what the science has to say about this leading up to this podcast. So did find out that one key to getting into this state is a balance between challenge and skill level. Meaning that if you encounter a task or have something to do that's beyond your current skill, you experience cognitive overload. And then if on the flip side, what you have to do is below your current skill level, you feel boredom. So does this ring true for you in how you've experienced this phenomenon?
Yes, I think that makes a lot of sense to me in how I've experienced it. I feel like there's this optimal time where I've been in a specific job or on a team for long enough that I know where things are at, but not so long that I know where everything is and I know immediately how to solve problems that, you know, in that sweet spot of I'm still learning, but it's not so hard that I'm getting frustrated all the time is where I really get into the flow state.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I definitely recognize the times when I feel bored. And those are when I look up and it's been 5 minutes, but it's felt like an hour. It's really the opposite. I feel like when I do get into those states where it's a really tough problem and I don't necessarily know how to solve it, the key thing for me is having a next step to do. Like if I have no place to turn or I have no idea of, what tools to use or where to look next, that's a really frustrating place to be in. And that's when I, really start to feel that headache feeling or like deep frustration. But I mean, solving problems is kind of what we do. So like, having some level of like, oh, I don't quite know how to do this, like that's okay. Like I don't have to have all the tools at my disposal um starting out. But um yeah, I think like for me what's been helpful in that is like giving myself kind of touch points of like, okay, I've been at this for an hour. How have I made progress? Have I gone down like a million different rabbit holes and I'm like spinning my wheels, or have I like written code that's cohesive and like is actually solving a thing?
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the reasons that I thought about this recently too is I feel like I don't know if this is actually accurate, but I feel like there are two sort of different types of flow states. There's the ones where I'm very deeply in a specific problem and I'm like wholly focused on solving this one thing. And then there's another type where I'm just multitasking so much that it also feels like a flow state.
Hmm.
And I noticed this recently because I've been working really hard on using the coding agent to solve small problems within our code base just to test it out and also, to knock out tech debt, all sorts of different things, test this new way of working. And usually that is a bunch of really small problems at once. And while I still feel like I'm very focused on those things, but I'm like changing context so quickly that it almost feels like a flow state as well. But it feels very different from like fully focused on solving this one problem end to end. I equate it. I remember when I used to work at Starbucks and I noticed that it feels very similar to when I would like work on the bar and make drinks like so quickly that I was like looking at the next like 5 or 6 drinks in a row and like
Mm,
optimizing and synchronizing my time so that like I would move so fast to get all these things done. It feels like that, uh,
yeah.
which is also like very cognitively taxing, like being in, a flow state could be otherwise. But I think it's interesting that, we're moving towards this new way of working where we have agents for coordinating. And I wonder if there's like a different thing that's happening. Wonder if there's a different flow state there. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I can definitely identify with that. And I almost think that the cognitive challenge there is time management or like task management. Like you're not necessarily focused on the tasks themselves, but you're like focused on how you can get like the most amount done in like a given set of time. Yeah. So I think like I have had that experience too, where I'm like, oh, let me, try to offload this, yeah, like tasks which might take me out of my like problem solving context. Like let's see if we can like automate this. And um yeah, like I've also felt that kind of like thrill of, hey, cool, it worked. Like I told it to create, I don't know, 15 issues and like it did the thing. Yeah, there's also the flip side where you're like, I told it to do this thing and it totally backfired. Like, oh no, I have to like go clean up the mess. But um yeah, as long as it's reversible and like, it's a pretty low risk thing, like it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like you tried something, it didn't work.
Yeah. That's
Um,
why version control exists.
yeah,
That's in place. You can always just get rid of it all and start over. But yeah.
yeah. Well, and it leads to some other factors that that research has identified are important to flow state. One of which is like immediate feedback, clear goals, sense of control over the task. So, um, like in development, this means knowing exactly what you're trying to do. Um, so like whether that's in code or like automating, like how do you know the thing is done? Like is that clear? Is that not clear? And yeah, I think like the idea is that in a flow state, like if whether you're automating or coding, like you can know pretty quickly like keep or leave versus like, oh, I don't know if that was the right thing or like I have to go back and like recontextualize. Yeah, having control over the task, like I guess knowing that like when you do something, it will like apply correctly, I guess. Like if I make a PR, like maybe it might not get accepted. And like that can be frustrating. Or yeah, like coding requires a lot of collaboration. And so to a certain extent that like is a lack of control. But like when you open up a change, like you're the driver of that change. But yeah, in several studies, the whole review process is cited as something that can really like take you out of flow state where you land in the like purgatory of reviews of nitpicks and no one approves it or no one, and it's like that can like that in itself can kind of be like demoralizing and take you out of your flow.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. There's an article recently by Simon Willison trying to recapture the vibe coding term and calling it vibe engineering. And one of the things called out there is how important it is now with, when you're using agent tools, whatever they may be, to make changes, to have like a really good preview environment or staging environment so you can quickly verify that those things actually work. And I thought that that was really interesting to think about because like I've noticed that too. That's a thing that I want to invest in more in the code bases that I work in because I want to be able to like, okay, ship this quickly and actually see what it looks like so that I don't have to open up a code base and actually like, check it all out and make sure it all works. So yeah, that good feedback definitely makes sense. I also kind of wonder as we spend more time working with AI tools to, you know, build everything, how the code review process might end up changing too. Like, are we going to need a review from somebody else on our team? Like, does code quality matter as much when, you have a bunch of robots writing the vast majority of the code that you're writing? Like, does code quality actually matter that much? Like, do those nitpicks, are they still as valid? And is readability still as valid when you can like use tools to help you interpret what complex code is doing? Yeah. So I wonder if we might optimize more towards like removing more of those checks so that people can move things more quickly and get more of that feedback in that state. I don't know. I don't know if I'm advocating for it either way because that also sounds really scary. But I don't know. Just a thought experiment recently on like how the world of software engineering is changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I think that, like, there's also, like, an idea of healthy friction and, I think, the like, an example of, um, sort of, like, being empowered to make a change is, like, a system change and, like, you know, you have to request access to something to make a change, like, okay, is that an extra step? Yes. Like, is it an important step in some cases to like prevent crazy production changes? Like, yeah. Like, and
Mhm.
arguably, like, the most important thing there is like auditability. And like, kind of to your similar point of like the most important thing for any code is that like it can be maintained, whether that's like through me reading it directly and like understanding what it does, or me asking a coding agent or like an LLM to interpret it for me. Like the important thing is that like I know what it's doing, and probably even more importantly, that it's like doing what it needs to do. So yeah, like the how we get there, it's like well, it kinda depends, I guess. Like, I would imagine that, like I don't know, I'm trying to, like, think of situations where, like, readability is, like, a trade-off I'd be willing to make. Like, I feel like in, like, a personal project where, like, no one else has to read it. But, like, that's kind of, like, existing standards for me. Like, I feel like anytime someone else would have to read what I do, like readability is key. I guess because also like coding bots or whatever, like pick up on the same context clues. Like if it's
Mhm.
like yeah, the devil's advocate is like if it's not readable to a human, it's probably also not really readable to an AI.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, what other kind of like tooling do we think of as like helping or hurting flow state?
That's a good question. I think for me, I feel like habit is really important. That's not really a tool, but like there are tools that I use to build habit. Like there's a specific Spotify playlist that when I listen to it, I am so much more likely to like get deeply into focus mode than
Mm.
if I don't have that available to me.
Uh-huh.
Same with like wearing these headphones that are like noise canceling so that it's not like there's a lot of noise around me, but it like, gets rid of all the street noise and everything. And so like I think that's really helpful, at least for me. It's probably very individual because I know some people focus better like sitting in a coffee shop or sitting, whatever it is that helps somebody focus.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, like, your environment. I'm very sensitive to noise, and I like having, like, a very quiet space, but having, like, certain playlists that I listen to I don't think I have one playlist specifically, but depending on my mood, I'll listen to something that, like, either matches my mood or, like, if I'm really low energy and I need something that kind of, like, boosts me, I'll put on something, like, higher energy. Yeah, I guess another thing that comes up a lot is interruptions and, um, like, we use Slack. So, how do you find that like, affects your flow state, and how do you manage that?
Gosh, yeah, that affects it a lot because I have FOMO and don't wanna miss anything that's happening in Slack. I've made a few changes to Slack though recently, like, I have turned off all sound notifications, and for the most part, most, like, of those, I don't know, desktop notifications usually I don't see them because 'cause they're on my laptop, which is, away from, like, my main monitor that I look at, but I try to reduce those so that I don't get interrupted, and that's been really helpful. It's hard though because there's so many channels at any large company and there's so many things to pay attention to that it can be really hard to make sure that you don't miss anything while also, make sure that those things don't interrupt you. Sometimes I'll do like the whole like note turn notifications off and that can be
Yeah.
helpful too. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like I keep my notifications on with Slack for the off chance that somebody needs me urgently. And I feel like that's always the thing that goes in my mind is there something going on and I'm the only one who can respond and it's like urgent. Like I need to respond right away. And the number of times when that has been true, I don't even know if it's literally ever been true. Like it is such an outlier that like it's a really dumb reason to like keep Slack so constant in my life. Um and I feel like the other problem I have with Slack is those moments of boredom, where I'm, like, only half engaged in a task, and then I'm like, "I'll check Slack to, like, see if there's anything, like, more important or, like, more interesting going on." And then I get, like, sucked in and, like, checking every channel. But it's, like, this balance where, like you said, like, you do have to know what's going on. You can't, like, be living under a rock. But you also, like, really can't get meaningful work done unless it's communication. Like, if there's something that needs to be communicated or figured out, like, Slack is the place to do it. But, like, there's so much there that I don't actually need to engage with.
Mhm. Yeah, I had to really get over my, like, fear of having unread notifications with
Uh,
Slack. I think for a long time, I was like, "Oh, I need to check every single channel." And recently, I actually made a change where I found, like, the maybe 5-ish most important channels, and there's an ability to set a notification where I don't have the sound ones, but I have, like, a notification that goes off in Slack when a new message is sent to those channels, and it also
mhm,
adds the little, like, red bubble next to them so that,
mhm.
like, I can have all of these unread channels, they all look the same, but then, like, the really important ones, when I get new messages there, then they have that little red bubble, and I'm like, "Okay, I need to go actually check those," and the rest of them I can look at whenever or just mark all as read. So
Yeah, 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 that's definitely I don't think I've, like, quantified the most important Slack channels to me because I do feel like it's also dependent, like, if an incident happens or, like, if I'm on a project, like, that then becomes the most important channel. But, like, that probably maybe is a good habit to get into of, like, having a priority section, like, being like, okay, at this point in time, like maybe once a week or something, like this would be interesting to try. Like at this point in time, these are the 5 most important channels to me. And then like everything else, I can check it when I check it.
Yeah, that's part of my on-call, like, going on-call thing too, is I, like, turn off all of the existing ones and then turn on all the on-call channels that I know I need to be in. That also lets me, like,
Mhm.
turn it off at the end of on-call and, like, unplug from being, like, the first responder for issues.
Yeah.
That's also helpful, I think.
Yeah. Huh. That's good. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please do.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess also like we've talked about flow state as like a personal, like individual experience, but is it something that can happen in collaboration? Like, have we ever had the experience of like pair programming and getting into a flow state?
Yeah, I think so. It depends on who the person that you're programming with is probably. I think it's probably more likely if you're using like really collaborative tools like live share or something like that. If I'm just watching somebody else program, like my ability to pay attention is pretty low. So if I'm
Okay.
driving or there's some sort of like live share involved where I can also like be in the code base at the same time, that's helpful. I like pair programming in general. I think it's probably hard to like reach that flow state while pair programming, but I think it's fun and it's nice to do it to for like knowledge sharing and for other reasons. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. So, like, to be fair, like, sometimes the beauty of pair programming is, like, introducing that friction in real time. So, like, I think sometimes, like, flow state in pair programming is actually an anti-goal where, like, if it's because I guess, like, part of the idea is your code at the end of a pair programming session is higher quality than it would be if you worked by yourself. And it might take longer to get there, but like maybe you have somebody who's like always checking and like, providing suggestions and like those things take you out of that state potentially of like, you know, pen to paper, everything flows. But the code might actually end up better. Um, but I think I have had experiences where maybe like I know one thing and the person I'm pairing with knows the other thing. So like alone that task would be maybe like too hard for me or something like that. And when I'm pairing, like we end up getting into a really good flow. Or on the opposite side too, like maybe something's kind of like mundane for me, but the person I'm pairing with doesn't know how to do it. And so then the like challenge is teaching. Like it's like a learning moment
Mhm.
kind of a thing. And so it can feel more like a flow because, I have to think about how I'm communicating and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, probably not like the first thing I think of, but I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. I think the science also talks about like other social dynamics that can encourage or discourage flow state. Some of these are like that familiarity, the interpersonal nature of any collaboration that you have, your physical environment, and then also psychological safety. Um, this is the idea that you can take risks and it'll be okay. So that can contribute to like anxiety and pressure and stress when it's not present. And those can be detractors for that flow state. Um, I think mostly because you're focusing on that instead of whatever the task is at hand. Like, you're worried more about how something will come across or whether it's wrong, whether you're gonna, get fired versus, like, how do I solve this problem the right way or even feel comfortable, like, taking time to understand it. Like, if you feel like you're always under pressure, always under the gun, like, maybe you don't feel like you have the time or the space to ask questions or, like, understand what you don't know to, like, get to that point where your knowledge or skill level meets the task.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And yet another reason for making sure that you like are investing time in those psychological safety things for like your whole team because then you can really unblock the rest of your team by making sure that people feel comfortable with, saying like, "Oh, I have a stupid question."
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, I think it's important to also know when to cut it off, right? Like, if there's somebody who's, like, always spiking or always, doing little things that like, never actually getting anything done because they're always trying something, like, well, maybe we need to find, like, a middle ground, like
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that resonates too because I've definitely been on teams before where like the entire team is just really productive as a whole. And so I wonder if that's because like that psychological safety is built in to where, people feel comfortable enough to be able to like actually perform much better than they would be able to otherwise. And then I've also been on teams where that's not the case and the opposite could be said. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
yeah, I feel like I'm, like, experiencing that now with my current team, where we're, like, relatively I wanna say relatively new. We've, like, been in our current state for about, like, 6 to 8 months, and it's kind of surprising to me that, like, only now do I really feel like we can have a lot of, like, open, honest conversations about, like, what is and isn't working. Like, we don't need to be overly nice to each other or, like, protect each other from being like, "But why?" Or, pushing the boundaries of, like, decision making, um, and also kind of, like, understanding how each other think to, like, read the subcontext, so,
Mhm.
yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah, that's a also a good point. I feel like for like why like changing up teams or like consistently reorging is probably setting some companies back too, because
Yeah.
those team dynamics are really important too for feeling that psychological safety. And if that's important for doing your best work, then constantly changing up the structure of the team or like constantly having the threat of layoffs is probably impacting the entire organization as a whole negatively.
Yeah, I wonder if there's been any studies around that or
Probably.
changes and layoffs and the impact on productivity.
There has to be. I'm sure we could. I don't wanna speak without actually knowing that that is the case, but I'm reasonably certain that there's some ties there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to go look up.
yeah. Okay, follow up. Cool. Well, I'll throw out a few other ideas that, have been suggested for, like, things to try to improve flow state. So one idea is this idea of 15% time, which means dedicating like a portion of every sprint to self-directed learning or exploration projects. So that's a way to find that balance between like executing and getting work done and like building up the skills and the knowledge to do what you're interested in. Having no meeting blocks of 2 to 4 hours, having integrated development and testing environments. So, kind of like you were talking about, being able to quickly get that feedback loop of whether what you did worked or not. Preserving context across sessions. So, like, not needing to build up what you learned previously or for someone else that you're working with. Like, yeah, like that time waste of rehashing what's already been figured out. And then some ways to consider the impacts or measure the impact is reduction in cycle time, increased reported focus time, satisfaction and engagement, and bug rates and rework percentage. Yeah.
Wow. I feel like a lot of those really fit into a lot of those, like, developer productivity metrics too, like space and, can't remember what the other work and bugs, like, that's a sign not only that you are having trouble with, focus, but also that like the entire organization might be there might be evidence that the entire organization is a less healthy than it could be and not able to get into that state.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of the things that I read mentioned, like, DORA metrics,
Mm.
which I think is along the same lines. Cool. Well, thanks for chatting about this. This was fun.
Yeah, it was. It was good.
Yeah. Um, so for our fun segment, I came up with a Cosmo style quiz about flow state.
Yes.
So Since it's something we all love, the quiz is titled, Are you a flow state flirt or a full-blown in the zone lover? Very Cosmo.
It
Uh,
is. Yeah, that's amazing.
so, so we have some questions, and all of these are A or B questions, and we'll count up our scores and then tally them at the end to see where we fall. All right. Question number 1. You just fixed a huge bug. How do you feel? A, totally zapped, need a break to recover, or B, energized, ready for the next challenge.
Okay, am I keeping track of them myself? Is that the
I can keep track of them. I'm going to say A for me.
Yeah, same.
Okay. Next question. Your ideal work music is A, the latest trending songs with lyrics, or B, non-lyrical repetitive music that fades away.
Definitely B for me.
Yeah, me too. I have trouble with lyric songs. All right, question 3. A coworker pops over for a quote, quick question. Option A, I stop what I'm doing and give them my full attention. Option B, I politely point to my headphones and keep coding.
I would say probably B because that's effectively what I'm doing by turning my Slack notifications off. And that's like the closest that I come to having a coworker come and bug me right now.
I can't stop myself from answering people at this point in my life, so I'm gonna say A.
Mhm.
All right. How long does it take to start writing meaningful code? Option A, 30 plus minutes, gotta check email, Slack, and news. Option B, 5 minutes, I get straight to the pre-selected task.
Oof. Is this like at the beginning of the day?
I guess so.
Yeah, definitely A. My first hour of the day is just not productive at all, usually.
Shit really depends on the day. I'm gonna also say A, though. That feels more right, more of the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Question 5. When tackling a huge feature, you hop between small different tasks when you get stuck. Option B, break the large problem down into small, clear sub goals.
B for sure.
Same. Okay. Question 7. Your notifications are set to all on. I check them as they come in. Or option B, do not disturb for blocks of 90 minutes or more.
B.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say A, but I'm going to change this.
Yes. Now you know
Yeah,
it's worth it. It feels really nice to just be like, you know what? I'm not that important.
not going to check it.
Yep.
Okay, we're almost done. When you hit a frustrating complex error, you immediately jump to Stack Overflow for a quick fix. Oof, this is outdated. Option B, I lean into the puzzle. The difficulty is the reward.
Mm. What's Stack Overflow again? Just kidding. I would say probably A if we're replacing that with like going to, whatever your tool of choice is. I go to Copilot when I get stuck on something pretty
Yeah.
quickly, but I don't know that I would argue that that's not necessarily taking you out of flow state. That's just like a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I usually at least like stop and think about it before I ask
Hmm.
Copilot. So I'm
Yeah.
going to say B.
Yeah. I'll go with that too. I don't immediately ask. Yes. B.
Okay.
Because sometimes, you know what? Sometimes you just need to actually read the error message and it will tell you exactly what's wrong. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, last question. Do you have a pre-flow ritual? For example, getting coffee or reviewing to-do lists. Option A, no, I just dive in and see what happens. Option B, yes, I have a 5-minute routine to mentally cue deep work.
Oh, definitely B. I
Yeah,
don't know if it's exactly 5 minutes, but yeah, I spend a lot of time like organizing my to-do list and getting everything perfect.
same.
Optimal amount of caffeine. It's a whole thing.
Okay, we have our answers. So I will ask you to tally your own score because I can't.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to count mine. You count yours. And I think we're only counting the B's. Yeah, okay. We only count the B's.
Okay.
Okay. And I think this is also a little skewed because I took out a few questions. So, how many did you get?
I got 6.
Okay, so you are a full-blown zone lover. You are a
Yes.
focused champion. You've mastered your environment and see challenging work as a reward. Your biggest risk is burnout. Make sure you schedule intentional breaks. And I think it's the Slack notifications that got me. I am a flow state flirt. You felt the magic, but distractions are winning the battle. Focus on reducing friction and setting a clear, non-negotiable focus block every day. You're close to unlocking peak performance.
That was amazing. We're gonna have to post this survey for everybody to be able to enjoy this as well. I want to hear what everybody else's answer is. This was so good.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, awesome. Thank you, listeners, so much for tuning in to Overcommitted. If you like what you hear, please do follow, subscribe, or do whatever it is you like to do on the podcast app of your choice. Check us out on Blue Sky and share with your friends. And until next week, goodbye.